Hi Phil, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thanks, Will. Very nice to see you again. And I think this is probably going to be our last podcast of the year.
Yeah, it is December. It's that time of year where people are in sort of planning and wrapping up the end of the year, and it's all quite busy. Um, but and for us, really, we just wanted to take a moment, I think, to reflect on the global sales transformation event that we had now was it about 2 weeks ago now? Seems a
Yeah,
while ago.
yeah.
Why don't you just start by letting the audience know what is GST? What's it all about?
Well, GST was set up. I think we were looking at it when we were running the event. But I mean, this is our 20th now that we've run. We have run GSTs not just in London, but in other parts of the world. But as well. So 15 years, I think we've been running it at the London Stock Exchange. And for us, the reason why we created GST was a kind of thought leadership event where we brought together a number of, key influences, if you like, or people that would challenge the way we think of sales. And so yeah, it was a thought leadership piece, and it was connected quite strongly with the academic side of what we do. We wanted to promote professionalizing sales, and we felt that we needed to put a stake in the ground and say, right, we want to professionalize sales. We want it to be a symbolic venue. At London Stock Exchange is so symbolic. It's a center of commerce in the UK, and and it's kind of grown from smallishly, small attended events to very large attended events. I think we had a record turnout this year of 95, which is the most we've had. It was almost at full capacity as well. So yeah, it's been an incredible journey.
I find it interesting that 15 years ago, when you had the vision of what GST should be, and you called it the Global Sales Transformation Event,
Yeah,
because 15 years ago, transformation was a hot topic, and it really is still that today. And if anything, I think um over the years, transformation has become such a key buzzword
yeah,
when talking to clients. And now with the advent of AI
yeah.
and how AI is transforming industries and what it means for the sales profession, the broad, you know, theme of global sales transformation is as relevant today as it was 15 years ago, if not more so potentially.
Yeah.
And
Right. I think we saw the word transformation. It certainly wasn't used as much then as you rightly say as it is now. But we felt that it needed to, the way in which we look at sales needed to be through the lens of sort of fundamental change. And I don't think we need to go into the debate about the difference between change and transformation, but it is, there's a slight danger. It's an overused term now that everyone is talking about transformation without really understanding what is meant by the word transformation. And for us, it goes quite deep. It often requires a profound change of mindset and approach. And as you rightly say, I think the challenges that the sales department, sales businesses face, and in fact any business, irrespective of whether it's sales, that we are operating in unprecedented times of change, with the opportunities that come with that, but of course the threats as well. So yeah, it's still very relevant, the topic transformation.
absolutely. And transformation, as we know it, is irreversible, isn't it? And when you see over time, over decades, arguably, you see events that shape the way we work and how industries change. We had key eras, the internet era in 1997 or whenever it was, and now the topic, the buzzword everyone's talking about is AI.
Yeah.
And so I think, yes, as we move into this new AI era, we are seeing transformation. We're seeing the word being used a lot, and it's probably being used correctly, in terms of that this is a fundamental transformation. It's irreversible. It's going to impact all of our roles and industries. And we're just at the beginning of it, which is very exciting. But also it is the reason why we're talking about it right now is because there was the theme of the event.
Yeah.
So the theme we had was human connection in the age of AI. And I think maybe if you could comment, Phil, on, you came up with this topic this time last year. So you had the foresight to think, well, this is something that most sales directors or senior sales professionals is going to be really they're going to really care about. But how do you why do you think this was such an important theme for GST this year?
Well, I think that there's the wave, you could almost call it the tsunami wave, because it was so powerful, of AI really hit when ChatGPT came onto the market, which is at the beginning of the previous year, and has really sort of taken the world by storm. I mean, the speed at which ChatGPT was being adopted was unprecedented in terms of millions of users downloading the app. So we knew that something phenomenal was taking place and was generating a huge amount of interest. And I think that coupled with that is this kind of fear that kind of exists about what is our function, what is our purpose, what is the purpose of us human beings when we're confronted with the extraordinary intelligence of artificial intelligence, and what does that mean? And that coupled with also, there was so much fake news. We've seen the emergence of things like BBC Verify, which is clearly there's an appetite for, what is the source of the truth. And so you've got this artificial intelligence and, large learning frameworks for, driving the way AI can be adopted and used. You've got automation. You've got all of these different factors. And I mean, I don't know if others feel the same way, but I felt as though, slightly sort of disconnect with what on earth is going on in the world. What is the purpose of us as human beings in this world in which we've got these incredibly powerful tools that can potentially take over, arguably a lot of the functions that we would otherwise, be doing, whether it's research or developing new frameworks. There's so many applications of the tool. So we felt it's important that we start to come to the surface of this, using the analogy of waves, and so you sort of come up to the surface and take a deep breath and start to really question. Now we know more about AI and get a sense of its future direction. What is the purpose of the human in this age of AI? And of course, within the context of sales. So what does it mean for the way in which we engage, embrace the technology, we use it, but we use it in the right way, and we use it to help further, if you like, the profession that we are, professionalizing sales.
Yeah. And I think going back to sort of this time last year as well, we were seeing a lot in the news, companies restructuring, Microsoft, SAP, Amazon,
Yeah,
and roles being really impacted by
yeah,
this wave of AI that's taking over. So yeah, it was a really um relevant
yeah.
event, and what I really like the most, we had some amazing keynote speakers. So just yeah, we had your research, which we're going to come on to. We announced Consalia's partnership with Aviso.
Yeah.
We had Julian Birkinshaw, so anyone who's a master's or an undergrad student currently on one of our programs, you might recognize his name, but fantastic to get his perspective on the lens in which we should view AI,
Yeah.
as well as master's students like Jessica from SAP and God, who else, Phil?
Yeah.
I'm missing someone.
Well, we've had amazing panel with Samantha Vessels and with Sam George from Samantha Vessels, President of Box, and Samantha George, Royal Mail implementing a very complex CRM system, talk about transformation, as well as Gareth Abel, who's one of the people that we interviewed as part of the Global Research Project. And of course, we had Ryan O'Sullivan there as well, sharing his insights around this whole, sort of relationship management topic, in which he's one of the world's leading experts, I'd say, which link very much back to the human connection.
Absolutely. And I think that's just one thing that makes GST so special, is that we're able to get such a broad perspective on a topic,
Yeah,
that's shared by thought leaders to a room full of thought leaders as well. So you're always going to get quite a energized room, and certainly in the networking sessions, there was a huge buzz.
there was.
I think so. It was a really positive day, and just want to gather your sort of takeaways or your favorite parts of GST. I know you were hosting it, Phil.
Quite interesting when you host an event like that, because you're focused in on the mechanics of the day and the timings as well, and you're standing up there sort of sensing the audience and listening to the speakers share. But I love the diversity of the topics and also the slight edginess of the topics, because we had, on the one hand, we had sort of Aviso, and there's no doubt in Trevor Rodriguez Templar, the CEO of Aviso, one of the world's leading experts around how to use AI in the revenue intelligence space, talking obviously with a huge amount of enthusiasm about what they've been working on over the last 11 years. But, and it was brilliant, to get his perspective, of course, with Lenovo as part of the panel, also talking about the benefits they've found by using the Aviso technology. But, coming back to the diversity kind of theme, we also had Professor Julian Birkinshaw sort of, in a way, do a bit of a reality check by saying, yes, AI is very disruptive, but from his perspective, the whilst the disruption takes place, traditional, well-established businesses are really well placed in order to make use of this sort of technology. And so it's not a question of, use AI and go out of business, or you'll go out of business. What his message was, there's some serious benefits in using AI for established businesses. Of course, you need to adapt and change, but there's good historical evidence to show that companies have been very good at doing that. I can't remember when his his data point was. But I loved that. But I loved the human touch, as well. Jessica sharing with us her master's project was amazing, using the theme of the conductor of an orchestra. She didn't let on that she's a very accomplished pianist herself at the event, but this idea of orchestrating resources is a very important theme.
Okay, so yeah,
For,
Phil, for you, what were the highlights for GST?
I loved every speaker for different reasons. I loved the diversity and the slightly edginess of the content that we had. We had, the great AI advocating Aviso team there with Trevor, one of the world's leading experts, I would say, on AI and how it's been used to enhance revenue intelligence systems. And then we had, sort of contrasted to that, Professor Julian Birkinshaw talking about, the way in which companies have embraced technology over the years. And whilst AI is being disruptive, there was a very positive and optimistic kind of view as to how AI would be integrated into business as usual. And he was saying that, internet, yes, when that was launched, we thought it was going to change the world, but has it really? And it was a very positive message, because I think that in this sort of dystopian world in which we live, it's good to have a sense of realism about what the new technologies are going to do and how quickly are they going to alter society. And then we have these wonderful sort of human touches of Jessica talking about a master's project, how she used the analogy of being the conductor of an orchestra, and how she sees and gets insights from the way effective orchestras work and the rhythm and the tempo and the pace and the cadence, and has brought that into her leadership practice. Yeah. And the brilliant panel discussions we had taking place as well, where we were able to debate leadership with CRM systems, with Gareth being quite provocative about what customers look for from salespeople. And I just loved the variety of the different speakers we had, all experts in their own rights, all totally authoritative in their domain area.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was great, high energy.
I think the network sessions again are really valuable
Yes.
as well. Just so it's an opportunity just for people to reconnect with each other. And I do know that some of them we see once a year. They always come to
They always come
GST.
back.
They
Yeah.
always come back. They always, hopefully, I mean, hopefully it always leaves people feeling like they've learned something, they've
Yeah.
connected, and they
Yeah.
leave inspired, right? It's not all, yeah, certainly under the topic of AI, it's not all negative, is it? Our jobs are still safe.
Yeah, but also I think they would have got inspiration from what AI can do to help
Mm,
improve productivity. And you could tell from a number of the people sort of setting up further discussions to explore, the what Aviso was doing. So yeah, so even though you had the disruptive element of AI being of concern, you also had the benefits of AI being
yeah.
coupled, and clearly quite transformational, I think, in how sales teams can start to think about using AI to improve productivity and efficiency.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, it's a topic that we ourselves are spending a lot of time discovering
Yeah,
and figuring out how, um, how we develop ourselves in terms of our AI capability.
yeah.
Um, and going back to the Aviso discussion, maybe you want to touch on the AI sales mindset coach that
Yeah, it
was
is. It's
announced.
been, what's been really interesting with the partnership with Aviso um, is taking the mindset framework that we've developed and looking at training the agentic coaching agents that are within the Aviso platform, or in fact, it will be a new agent that's being created to be able to look at any kind of customer interaction, customer conversation through the lens of the 4 positive differentiating mindsets. And yeah, so it's very exciting to kind of launch the progress we've been making in that respect. And it's something that I've personally been involved in. It's been remarkable the speed at which we've been able to get to a point where, with even 90% accuracy on the sales mindsets, we've seen the agent interpret live customer conversations. And what's neat about it, it's not just analyzing, is the conversation demonstrating authenticity or client centricity or whatever it might, whichever one of the 4 key mindsets we're talking about. But it's actually making suggestions also about how something could have been rephrased. So next time you have that conversation, you can start to really think about and learn from previous conversations that have taken place. And I think what it's given me an appreciation for is literally the scale at which organizations who are interested in developing a sales culture or a sales support culture around the mindsets, the scale at which there can be support given to analyze how we're currently doing, but also coaching on what could we be doing differently to get potentially a better result, better success rate with our clients. So that scale angle for me is incredibly exciting, and can see all sorts of possibilities for future research, linking certainly to ROI and performance. So yeah, it's a very, very exciting relationship, and very pleased we have this rather special partnership with Aviso.
When do you think we'll be able to sort of test the AI agent, and if people are interested in
That's a really
understanding
good question.
its capability?
Yeah, I think that we're in a proof of concept phase right now, Will, and we've just gone through another iteration of training, and we're going to get the feedback on that this week, we hope, or early next week. And if we feel that we are 97% to what we would consider to be an accurate analysis of a conversation through those lenses, we're then going to move into a phase of that proof of concept, which is how can we, create some easy to use sort of dashboards that the business success teams or the users of the product would get benefit from. For example, trend analysis of conversations, analysis by customer. What would managers like to see? So we're kind of moving into how is the data going to be presented, and I think that's going to be fairly quick, to be honest. So I'd like to think by the end of January we might be in a position of actually going live with that proof of concept. Certainly, it's going to be tested internally before it goes live, but for us, it's important that the agent does what we says it will do. It coaches in the right way, and that we give people the insights that they would find useful in their day-to-day work.
Absolutely. I mean, it is taking us to a different level, because quite often we encourage people on our training programs or in our business school to evaluate their own mindsets against a survey, which is, taken in a point in time. Whereas this is live.
This
data.
is 4x7.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's going to be really fascinating to see how sales professionals respond given different situations, different times of day even. I mean, there's so much to it that you can extrapolate from the data. That it really is going to be fascinating.
And I mean, one of the other neat features that we're building is the chance to role play using the agent as well. So you have a chance to kind of practice something before you deliver it. And again, you can get feedback through those mindsets on what you're seen to be practicing. So yeah, it's a very, very powerful tool. Yeah. So we're going to be very excited to launch it soon.
And I think it ties in quite well with the global research project that you've been doing together with our
partners.
And with our partners around the sales mindsets. So the last time you did the research project was part of your doctorate, wasn't it, Phil? Which took you all over the world identifying the values that customers look for. That was in 2008, 2009.
Roughly. It was published then, but the actual research took place, sort of
even before.
Preceding that. So it was actually brilliant to go back to that exercise again and to reflect on has the benchmark changed? Are there any new emerging mindsets? So it was really, really nice to do. And also it was great to do it this time in collaboration with other researchers.
So why don't we take a step back? So throughout this year, you've been you've reopened the research just to make sure and to validate whether or not the sales mindsets of authenticity, client centricity, tactful audacity, and proactive creativity are still as relevant in today's world as it was when you originally did it. And so why don't you tell us a bit more around your approach, who you've been interviewing and surveying, etc., and any key findings that you've had throughout this year?
Well, if we start off with the kind of approach, so the first element of the approach was that we wanted to take pretty much exactly the same approach in terms of questions that we asked all those years ago. And also one of the key findings all those years ago was the percentage of salespeople that sell to customers in the way that they want. So we wanted to kind of be able to do this correlation of the data over a period of time. But we also wanted to capture the phenomenon that is technology now. If it didn't come up naturally in conversation, we wanted to get perspectives around the extent to which buyers actually saw technology affecting the way they engage with salespeople. Did they want to engage with salespeople, given that that so much of buying is now done online? So we wanted to sort of get a sense also from the buyers around the impact that technology in particular is having. So yes, the framework was exactly the same, but what was different were maybe some of the more leading questions around technology that we wanted to ask, but also the fact that this was now a collaboration. It wasn't just me asking the questions. It was one of our master's students, Stefan Froberg, who's the MD for SAP in Finland, as part of his final master's dissertation. He was wanting to research this topic with us, but also our partners in Spain with development systems and proxy. They have their senior consultants engage in some of the interviews of customers. And that enabled us to take us into different regions of the world. I must, of course, mention our partners in South Korea with the Assist Business School, also responsible and, with links with a lot of big Korean companies over there with operations around the world taking part in the research. So, the team of researchers meant that there was absolutely no bias. The questions were the same, but each of us, sort of asked the same questions, and we pulled our research findings together and then started to evaluate what the findings were within the construct of the mindsets.
And I would imagine this time round it being much quicker to do the research than when you're doing it.
I'd say that, well, the research itself took the same amount of time because each of the research interviews was, roughly 45 minutes to an hour. And we did over 50 of those interviews. But of course, what enabled us to do the analysis so much more quickly was the thematic analysis, was very much helped using technology. And of course, we used that coupled with our own reflections to start to make sense of the findings of the research, which we did. But I would say that the other thing that was really different about this time round is we had the benefit of all the sales mindset survey data that we've collected over the last 5 years. We had over 1,200 surveys completed from people from all over the world. And we actually fed that into the research report or the white paper report that we've now produced. So it made for a very different take on what was initially the production of, when I go back to my daughter, it was just a framework at that point based on the research. This is now sort of being able to evaluate the business impact of the sales mindsets, as well as are there any new mindsets that we should take into account?
And were there any kind of sub values that you were surprised to emerge through the research?
There was one that I think is quite transformative in the sense of really making us think more deeply about one in particular, the mindsets. But a lot of the thematic analysis themes that came from looking at all the research data pointed to the relevance of the mindsets that were developed all those years ago. So integrity, client centricity, curiosity, collaboration, these were outputs of the thematic analysis, courage. And it's quite easy to take these words that came out of the thematic analysis and put them within the 4 mindsets construct that we built all those years ago. But there were some interviews that we did that really provoked some deeper thinking around the topic of authenticity, which is, I think, influenced by the artificial intelligence wave that we're currently sort of surfing, if you like. And so we've come up with this this description of authenticity being intellectual authenticity as being the first of the 4 defining mindsets. And I think the reason why this word intellectual has surfaced is because buyers have used this word themselves. They were saying in some of the interviews they're looking for intellectual honesty, and they didn't want intellectual dishonesty. And these were different people making some sort of commentary about what they really sought from relationships with salespeople.
But what does that mean? What does intellectual authenticity mean?
Well, they're looking for original thinking. So if we focus on the word authenticity to begin with, that's very much connected with acting with integrity, honesty, transparency. So the word authenticity is very much linked to, if you like, a moral code of conduct, which is giving customers the perception they're dealing with someone who's not talking from a script, that's someone who they seem to be when they turn up. But the word intellectual is something that says, yes, we want people to be authentic when they turn up, but we also want them to think, to use reasoning skills, to reflect critically on problems that we have and therefore come up with solutions. It's a word that kind of really resonated when we started to do the thematic analysis, because we've often said with our academic programs that what we're doing is we're teaching people how to think on these programs, which is, reflective practice, if you like. And to hear customers use this word intellectual honesty, it sort of made us connect this dimension of toolkit that we think is very important for salespeople to have with the academic programs that we also run. So this word intellectual authenticity is a counterbalance to artificial intelligence. So we've got intellectual authenticity being the human side, and we've got artificial intelligence being the technology side. How intellectual authenticity connects with artificial intelligence is where you're going to get magic happening. So for us, it was a rather beautiful way of connecting the research from buyers with this new wave of technology that we're now embracing from an AI perspective.
So this is, it's definitely an evolved value that we've seen.
Yep.
So from your research, it's safe to say that fundamentally the values, they're still relevant, but authenticity is evolving.
Yeah, and I think I would say that it's quite interesting because one of the things that we've noticed with the mindset survey data is if you look at averages overall, and it could be helpful to see a slide of this data, and I think there's the opportunity to look at slides when we post this on YouTube. But when you start to look at the performance across all 4 mindsets across 1,200 respondents, you see the average scores actually being quite close to what we would consider to be in the winner's circle. But what we've realized is that only 10%, around 10% of all the respondents score over the 80% score across all 4 mindsets. So you could have some that self-analyze themselves as having very high scores of proactive creativity and tactful audacity, but a very low score comparatively on authenticity and client centricity. And we've come to realize that unless you have over 80% across all 4, it doesn't matter if you've got high scores on proactive creativity and tactful audacity. You open yourselves up to the risk of clients not seeing you as being authentic. Therefore, those values, those mindsets that you have will not land in the right way. So this is something else that surfaced from the analysis of all the data, is the importance of actually having a balance of high scores across all 4 mindsets.
We always suggest that you need to have authenticity and client centricity in order to establish trust.
We do. Yeah, we always say that, and it's like a hierarchy. But what we haven't, I think, spelled out, but we, of course, doing so now, is the importance of getting that winner's circle score across all 4. And that should be the goal. That should be the goal in the way we start to think, we start to act, we start to behave. And I think that's the nuanced challenge that we face moving forward, is how are we going to equip sales organizations with the capability to be in the winner's circle across all 4 of the mindsets all the time.
And going back to your research, when you again originally did it, one of the key findings was that only 10% of sales professionals sold in the way that clients want to be sold to. Are we working with the same kind of minority on sales professionals getting it right, or has that figure shifted? Can you share some insight from the research you've done?
So I think there's some good news on that front, Will, which is that, when we did the first round of the research, 80% of all the respondents that we interviewed, and there were sort of 89, I think, that took part in the original research we did, said that less than 10% of salespeople sold in a way that they really want. The figure that we've got now is less than 30% sell in a way that they want. So my sense is that there has been definitely a marked improvement in the perceptions of how sellers sell compared to those years ago. And I think this sits quite well with me because I've always felt we sort of bash poor salespeople over the head with that figure. And it's still not good enough. It's still not where it needs to be, but there's definitely been an improvement according to customers. And the buyers that we've interviewed, range from, heads of procurement right through to, even the chairman of sort of fairly large PLCs. So yes, there's still room for improvement, but the standards to us have definitely improved over the last 15 years. And, that makes me feel that, yes, the sales profession or sales enablement is moving the needle in the right direction, but it still needs to move forward. But there has been progression.
And I think that was one of my key takeaways from GST,
Yeah,
was that with all these AI tools and training that's now available, the standard of a sales professional is going to rise because they are being
yeah,
coached, they're being sort of monitored in a sense. So you will see a rise in the sort of sales behaviors that customers want to see.
yeah,
But one thing that stood out from GST is going back to the human element, and it's making sure that the way that you engage and build relationships and establish trust with your clients through intellectual authenticity and the mindsets, for example, is going to be such a key point of differentiation. And it's something that many people spoke about during GST.
yeah. Yes, they did. Yeah, so the human connection. I mean, I was interested just to know from buyers, how important they felt that human connection was in the sales process, because we'd seen the McKinsey report that had suggested that even for very high value B2B sales projects, that, the trend is definitely going to be having no contact, with salespeople. And buyers actually said, there's one quote that stood out for me, which was, I could not stand in front of my CEO about a big project that we've implemented with the CEO questioning the fact that I had not met in person, the team of people that we're having to engage with this new project, particularly if something should fail in its execution. And that, I think that's true. I think people still need that human connection. And that's really important. But I'd just like to make one other comment, which is that I think there is a risk with the advent of AI that salespeople will take shortcuts. And I think we've seen that, particularly in the way outreach is done, sort of, lead generation. You can immediately tell, if this is an authentically created email or is it an AI generated agent that's produced some sort of outreach. And I think that because it's now so easy to do the research and quick, that salespeople will take shortcuts. And I think there is a chance that AI is actually going to dumb down the sales process, um, rather than enhance the sales process. So I think it's a topic that we need to come back to on a regular basis to check to what extent are people using all of these technologies in the right way,
Yeah.
and ensuring that layer of human connection sits on the top and provides that magic that provides, like you were saying earlier on, the sort of the source of differentiation.
Hmm. Yeah, you raise a really good point. It's about where do you want to apply AI? And I think what we've seen so far is sort of, okay, so I can now pump out many personalized in inverted commas emails to a huge audience, written by AI, and that's never going to seem particularly authentic, and it can lead to complacency for a sales professional.
Yeah.
But the tools, and I have to say with Aviso especially, are and IntraHive, these are tools that are there to provide the salesperson with data so that they have all of everything in their toolkit to be more human in the right way, if you know what I
No.
mean. It kind of enables that effectiveness of a
Yeah.
salesperson, and so that's something that I've been really impressed by from what I've seen in both
Yeah.
platforms.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned IntraHive as well, because of course, their technology, which enables you to look at sort of human relationships across, very complex stakeholder engagements, as you rightly say, provides data that can enable you to leverage, those relationships in a way to start to enhance the services that you could potentially supply the different customers you're looking at.
Yeah.
And yes, with the Aviso technology, really, there's no real excuse of not turning up prepared. Yeah, for meetings. So yeah, it's very exciting what these automated tools can do to help increase the productivity and efficiency and effectiveness of salespeople over time. So for sure, I'm really excited about what the future holds in store by getting the balance right between the technology and the human connection.
And it'll be sort of remiss of me not to mention that we, throughout last year, and we're going to continue this year, to have what we call breakfast briefings. And we run these very sort of informal, but in a formal location it tends to be at the RAC Club in London. Breakfast briefings where we discuss a topic with
Yeah.
like-minded sort of sales leaders, and it's hosted by IntraHive and Consalia. But it's a great way to discuss topics like AI, or it could be a number of different things
Yeah.
around a table over breakfast. So our next one is on the 29th of January. And if you're interested in joining, please do let us know. And then I guess the final comment I have is for anyone who's interested in the research that Phil and the Consalia team have been doing over the course of this year. We have a white paper that you can download. It's on our website. We go into quite a deep level of analysis in terms of the data, comparing genders and things like that. There's quite a lot of insight there. So I would highly recommend anyone who's interested in downloading the white paper. Phil, is there any other comments you want to make just before we wrap up? Plus, we got to get ready for our Christmas party.
We do. Yeah. We need to catch the train quite soon. But no, it was an amazing event, and it was a convergence, like you say, of the global research project. Exciting for us to announce the partnership with Aviso. We hope to do breakfast briefings also on revenue intelligence systems with Aviso next year as well. So yeah, look out for the dates.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you very much. Well, see you later.